They called him the Weapon of Bloodstone, not for the wars he'd won or the enemies he'd killed, but for what he kept hidden beneath his armor. And every woman who discovered the truth ran screaming. King Garrison Thorne stood 7 feet of scarred muscle and absolute dominance, an alpha whose presence bent entire rooms into silence. At 29, he ruled the most powerful werewolf territory spanning from the Smoky Mountains to the Atlantic coast. He'd earned his crown through strategic brilliance in the border wars, through an alpha force so crushing that rival packs surrendered at the mention of his name, through a reputation that made grown men drop to their knees when he walked past. But beneath the crown lived a secret that had shattered him 31 times in 7 years. The healers had a clinical term for it: primordial alpha syndrome. 1 in every 10,000 male werewolves carried the ancient bloodline, a genetic throwback to the first shifters when alphas needed to be physically overwhelming to survive. Everything about Garrison was excessive: his height, his strength, his dominance. But it was what he kept beneath his clothes that had earned him the nickname, whispered from Virginia to the Carolinas, the Weapon. Not for rage or cruelty, but for a physical nature so impossibly proportioned that no woman had ever been brave enough to claim him. 31 rejections. Some fled before morning, some cried, one fainted, several laughed as if his body were a cosmic joke. The rejection that broke him happened 18 months ago. Her name was Vivian Caldwell, daughter of the Western Pax Alpha. She'd seemed different, educated, worldly, confident. She'd lasted through 6 months of courtship, through the formal engagement, all the way to their wedding night. Her scream woke the entire royal wing. "Get away from me," she'd said, scrambling backward across the floor in her torn wedding dress. "You're not a man, you're a monster. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think any woman could survive that? You're deformed." She'd fled before sunrise. By noon, every supernatural pack in the Eastern Territories knew. By evening, the jokes spread like wildfire. By week's end, Garrison had stopped believing he deserved to be loved. For 18 months, the King of Bloodstone ruled from shadows. His commands came through messengers. His presence at gatherings became a ghost story. The man who'd united 5 warring territories, who'd brought unprecedented peace, who'd killed rogue alphas with his bare hands, that man disappeared. In his place lived a king who'd learned that all the power in the world meant nothing when you were too broken to be touched. Quick question, lovely. If the world told you that you were too much, too broken, too different to ever be loved, would you still believe you deserved it? If Garrison's story is already pulling at your heart, stay with me, because what's about to unfold will test everything you think you know about love and sacrifice. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to welcome you to Luna Werewolf Romance Stories. Whether you're a longtime listener or this is your first time here, I'm so glad you found us. Quick question, what time is it where you're watching from right now? Are you listening during your morning commute, your lunch break, maybe late at night when you can't sleep? Drop a comment and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. I love hearing from you. Then his father remarried and the scandal nearly tore the kingdom apart. Former King Ronan Thorne, now 85 years old and frail, his werewolf healing finally surrendering to age, had done something 6 months ago that set the entire supernatural community ablaze. He'd married 24-year-old Sutton Raleigh. The kingdom exploded. Sutton wasn't nobility. She wasn't even from a prominent pack. She was the daughter of a struggling Omega family from the Outer Banks. No title, no connections, no political value. She'd been working as a caretaker in the Royal Medical Wing, helping elderly wolves transition through their final years with dignity when Ronan met her. The court called it obscene. A gold digger seducing a senile old man, an Omega manipulating a widower for access to wealth and power. Chancellor Darius Kovac, Ronan's former beta, and the man who'd expected to guide the aging king through retirement, led the attack with vicious precision. "That girl is a parasite," he declared in open council. She saw a dying old man and dollar signs. Lady Margot Thorne, Garrison's aunt and matriarch of the bloodline, was equally cruel. "Ronan has disgraced this family. When I think of Helena's memory being spat on by some common Omega trash, even Garrison's cousin, Thaddeus Kovash, captain of the Royal Guard, had smirked at a council meeting. I give the marriage 6 months before she smothers him with a pillow and runs off with the inheritance. Garrison had never met her. He'd skipped the wedding, avoided every family dinner, ignored every attempt at introduction. He decided without evidence that Sutton Raleigh was exactly what they said, a manipulator who targeted a vulnerable old man. Until the night he actually met her, and everything he thought he knew turned to ash. The rain hammered against stone as Garrison stood on the North Tower at 2 a.m, staring over his kingdom. Insomnia had become his closest companion. Sleep meant dreams, and dreams meant reliving 31 rejections on an endless loop. So he stood in the cold, wondering why being the most powerful man in 5 territories felt exactly like being the loneliest. Your father talks about you constantly. The voice made him spin, hand instinctively reaching for the blade at his hip, but there was no threat. Just a woman standing at the tower entrance in cotton pajamas and an oversized cardigan, her long auburn hair pulled into a messy bun. She carried 2 cups of tea, her bare feet silent on wet stone. Sutton Raleigh. Garrison's first thought punched through his carefully maintained bitterness. She's beautiful, not in the polished, calculated way of court women. She wore no makeup. Her clothes were plain, but there was something in her face, an openness, a warmth that made his chest tighten in ways he didn't want to examine. His second thought came fast and sharp. She's your father's wife. Stop. My father, Garrison said, his voice cold as winter, should mind his own business. Probably. She set both cups on the wide stone ledge between them, not moving closer, respecting the space he'd carved around himself like a moat. But he misses you. Even if you've been avoiding him like he's diseased. I've been busy. You've been hiding. No judgment in her voice, just fact delivered with the kind of honesty that felt like a blade between the ribs. Garrison's jaw clenched hard enough to hurt. You don't know me? No. She leaned against the parapet, looking out over the rain-soaked kingdom instead of at him. That was tactical, he realized. She wasn't crowding him, wasn't demanding eye contact, wasn't performing any of the calculated moves he'd learned to recognize. But I know what loneliness looks like. I've worn it most of my life. The admission hung in the air between them. Garrison found himself studying her profile, the curve of her jaw, the way rain had started to dampen her hair. The complete lack of artifice in the way she stood there, just existing beside him without expectation. They stood in silence. Garrison counted the minutes, 11. She didn't fill the quiet with nervous chatter or false sympathy. She just stood there, comfortable in a way that felt impossible. The only sound was rain against stone and the distant rumble of thunder. They hate you, Garrison finally said. The court, my family, they think you're using him. I know. Are you? Sutton turned to look at him then. Green eyes met his directly, holding none of the fear or calculation or hunger for power he'd expected. Just exhaustion and something that looked like bruised honesty. No, I love him. Not the way court gossips imagine. She wrapped her hands around one of the teacups, seeking warmth. Ronan's like the grandfather I never had. He's kind and funny, and he treats me like I matter. Like I'm worth something beyond what I can provide or produce. She looked back out at the storm. He hired me to help him through his final years with dignity. Somewhere along the way we became family. The marriage was his idea. Said it would protect me from my own blood after he's gone. Give me a title and income so I wouldn't end up back where I started. Where's that? Garrison heard himself ask. Poverty. Abuse. My family sold my older sister to a pack in Tennessee when she was 17, like livestock. Traded her for territory access and a cash payment. I was next in line until your father hired me. Her voice didn't waver, but Garrison saw her hands tighten on the cup. He saved my life. So no, I'm not using him. I'm just grateful someone finally saw me as human instead of disposable. The words hit harder than they should have. Garrison knew that feeling. being reduced to parts instead of seen as whole, being judged by what you were instead of who. "Why did you really come up here?" he asked. Sutton's smile was small and sad. "Because your father said his son hasn't smiled in 2 years. Because I was curious about the famous king, who's too busy ruling to visit his own family." She picked up the second cup and held it out to him. "And because loneliness is terrible, and even kings shouldn't have to deal with it alone." Garrison stared at the offered cup. Such a simple gesture. But in 18 months, no one had offered him anything without wanting something in return. No one had sought him out just to stand in comfortable silence. No one had looked at him like he was worth the effort of climbing 247 steps in the rain. He took the cup. Their fingers brushed. The contact lasted less than a second, but it burned through him like lightning. "Thank you," he said. The words felt rusty, unpracticed. Sutton's smile widened just slightly. "Anytime." She left after finishing her tea, disappearing back down the tower stairs as quietly as she'd come. Garrison stood alone again, holding an empty cup, staring at the space where she'd been. That should have been the end of it. One conversation, nothing more. But the next night, she appeared in the library while he reviewed territory disputes. Didn't speak, just settled into a chair across the room with a book. Her presence was quiet, undemanding. After an hour, she left with a small wave. The night after that, he found her in the kitchens at 3 a.m, making tea because she couldn't sleep either. They talked about books, about the ocean, about nothing important and everything that mattered. It became a pattern. Accidental meetings that felt anything but accidental. The gardens when he needed air. The training yard when he forced himself to resume conditioning. The library, the kitchens, the tower. She never asked about his reputation. Never mentioned the rumors everyone whispered. Never looked at him with pity or morbid curiosity. She just talked, listened, existed in his space like she belonged there. Garrison found himself seeking her out, making excuses to be where she was. And for the first time in 2 years, he laughed, actually laughed. Over her story about accidentally burning cookies for Ronan and setting off every fire alarm in the East Wing. The sound of his own laughter startled him. It felt foreign. Wrong, like he'd forgotten he was allowed to feel joy. But more dangerous than the laughter was the realization that came 4 months after that first tower meeting. He was falling in love with his father's wife. The thought hit him one night in the library. Sutton was reading across from him, firelight catching in her hair, and his wolf surged forward with such force it nearly knocked him out of his chair. "Mine," his wolf screamed. "Ours. Claim her. Mark her. Keep her." Garrison's hands gripped the arms of his chair hard enough to crack wood. This was wrong, forbidden, impossible. She was married to his father. The scandal alone would destroy them both. The kingdom would call him depraved. She'd be labeled a whore. Everything they'd both survived would be for nothing. But his wolf didn't care about scandal or propriety or consequences. His wolf only knew that this woman, this perfect, impossible woman, saw him. Really saw him. Not the crown or the reputation or the curse, just him, and he was utterly, devastatingly in love with her. Across the library, Sutton looked up from her book. Her eyes met his. Something passed between them. Recognition, acknowledgement, the same forbidden feeling reflected back at him. She knew. She felt it too. The air between them thickened, charged, dangerous. Neither of them moved. Neither spoke. But the truth hung there like smoke, impossible to ignore. Garrison forced himself to look away first, forced himself to breathe, forced himself to remember all the reasons this couldn't happen. But later that night, alone in his chambers, he pressed his palms against his eyes and admitted the truth to the darkness. It was already too late. The library became their refuge. Night after night, they'd end up there, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence, always aware of the electricity humming between them, always careful not to touch, always pretending they didn't feel the pull. But the pull was getting stronger. One night, Sutton told him about her childhood, about parents who saw Omega daughters as burdens, about a sister sold like property, about learning early that her value was measured by what others could take from her. That's why Ronan's kindness meant so much, she said quietly. He was the first person who ever asked what I wanted, who treated my choices like they mattered. Garrison watched her face in the firelight. What do you want? The question hung between them, loaded, dangerous. Sutton met his eyes. Her answer was barely a whisper. Things I'm not allowed to want. The confession landed like a punch. Garrison's wolf howled, his hands clenched into fists. The distance between them felt like miles and inches at the same time. Sutton, he started. Don't. She stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. Don't say whatever you're about to say. We both know where this is going, and we both know it can't happen. Why not? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because I'm married to your father, because the kingdom already hates me, because this would destroy everything. And if those things didn't matter, but they do matter. She turned to face him fully, and he saw tears gathering in her eyes. They have to matter, because if we do this, if we cross that line, there's no going back. Everything burns. Your throne, my safety, Ronan's peace in his final years. Everything. So we just ignore it? Garrison stood, and the movement brought him closer. Not touching, but close enough to feel her warmth. We pretend this isn't happening? What choice do we have? The truth. His voice dropped. Honest. Raw. The truth that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you for months. That I make excuses to be wherever you are. That I've tried to fight this, and I'm losing. Sutton's breath hitched. Garrison. The truth that you're the first person in 2 years who's made me feel human. Who's made me believe I might not be as broken as everyone says. You're not broken. Then why does everyone run? The question escaped before he could stop it. All the pain he'd buried came rushing up. Why did 31 women look at what I am and decide I was too much? Too wrong. Too impossible. Sutton's hand lifted like she might touch his face, then fell. Because they were cowards. Because they didn't see you, they just saw their own fear. And you, I see you. Her voice was fierce. All of you. The king who's forgotten he deserves to be happy. The man who makes himself small so others feel safe. The person who's been told he's too much for so long, he started to believe it. A tear slipped down her cheek. I see you, Garrison, and I'm not running. The words broke something in him, or maybe fixed something. He couldn't tell which. The space between them evaporated. He didn't know who moved first. It didn't matter. Suddenly her hands were in his hair, and his were framing her face, and they were kissing like drowning people gasping for air. The kiss was desperate, tender, forbidden, perfect. It tasted like salt and tea and everything he'd been denying himself for months. Her body was soft against his, fitting in ways that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sutton pressed her forehead to his chest. This is wrong, she whispered. I know. We can't do this. I know. But neither of them moved, neither let go. Garrison's hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up. Her eyes were huge, pupils blown wide, lips swollen from his kiss. Sutton, his voice was breaking. I need you to know something. What? 31 women saw what I am and ran. But you've been seeing me, really seeing me, for months. And you haven't fled. You defended me to yourself before you even met me. You sought me out. You made me feel like I was worth the effort. His thumb traced her cheekbone. So whatever you decide, stay or go, this or nothing, I need you to know that you already saved me. Not tonight. Every day. Just by treating me like I was human. Fresh tears spilled down her face. Garrison, I love you. The confession tore out of him. I know it's wrong and forbidden and impossible, but I love you, and I'm tired of pretending I don't. Sutton's sob was half laugh, half cry. She pulled his face down to hers. I love you too. God help me, I love you too. The second kiss was slower, deeper, full of promise and desperation, and the knowledge that they were choosing each other despite every consequence. When they finally separated, Sutton's hands were shaking. "Take me to your chambers." Garrison's wolf roared in triumph. Every instinct screamed yes. Claim her. Mark her. Make her yours. But reality crashed over him like ice water. He stepped back, put distance between them, even though it felt like tearing off his own skin. "No," the word came out strangled. "I can't." Confusion and hurt flashed across Sutton's face. "Why?" "Because of what I am." The admission felt like swallowing broken glass. What I have. What made every other woman run screaming. Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed immediately by fury. "You think I'd run?" They all did. His voice was hollow. Every single one. When they saw what's there, what the healers call primordial alpha syndrome, they fled. Some screamed, some cried. One laughed in my face. He forced himself to meet her eyes. "I'm not normal, Sutton. Everything about me is excessive, disproportionate. I can't watch you look at me the way they did. I can't survive you running too." The silence stretched, heavy, loaded. Then Sutton did something that stopped his heart. She took his hand, the one that could snap her wrist without effort, and placed it against her throat. Her pulse fluttered under his palm like a trapped bird. "Feel that," she said quietly. "That's my life in your hands. Your strength could kill me in seconds. But I'm not afraid." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but her voice stayed steady. "Because size without violence is just size. Power without cruelty is just power. Whatever you're hiding, whatever those women couldn't handle, that's their failure, not yours." Her green eyes blazed. "I'm not them. I'm not running. So either trust me enough to let me make my own choices or admit you're the one who's afraid." Garrison's hand trembled against her throat. This woman, this impossible, perfect woman who saw straight through every wall he'd built. His wolf was howling, demanding, desperate. But louder than his wolf was his heart, and his heart was screaming that she meant every word. Garrison pulled her close, burying his face in her hair, breathing her in. "What if I hurt you?" "You won't. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Her arms wrapped around him. "Because you've been holding yourself back your entire life. Because gentleness is your default, not your effort. Because the man who kneels to tend his father's feet and makes himself small so others feel safe would never hurt someone he loves." She pulled back just enough to look up at him. "Let me in, Garrison. Please." The please broke him. He kissed her again, pouring everything into it. Love and fear and desperate hope. Then he took her hand and led her from the library through empty corridors to his private chambers. His hands shook as he locked the door behind them. This was it, the moment of truth. She'd either stay or she'd run, and he wasn't sure he'd survive the latter. Sutton turned to face him, no fear in her eyes, just trust and want and love. "Show me," she said. "Show me what they couldn't handle." Garrison's heart was trying to beat out of his chest. His hands went to his shirt, slowly, giving her time to change her mind, to leave, to run like all the others. But Sutton didn't move. She watched him with steady eyes as fabric fell away, as he revealed the body that had earned him the nickname Weapon, the excessive muscle, the scars, the sheer overwhelming size of him. Her expression didn't change. No horror, no disgust, just careful attention. His hands went to his belt. This was it. The moment 31 other women had fled, he almost couldn't breathe. "Garrison," Sutton said softly. "I'm still here." The words gave him courage. He continued, revealing himself completely, vulnerable in a way he'd never allowed himself to be, and for the first time in his life, the woman in front of him didn't scream. Sutton's eyes widened, but not with fear, with something else entirely. "Oh," she breathed, "Garrison." Her reaction wasn't horror, it was wonder. "You're not running," he said. The words came out broken, disbelieving. "Why would I run from perfection?" She crossed to him, placed her small hands on his chest, feeling the thunder of his heartbeat. "Do you understand what I'm seeing? Not a curse, not a deformity, just you, all of you, and you're beautiful. A sound escaped him, half sob, half laugh, years of shame and rejection cracking under the weight of her acceptance. Sutton stood on her toes, pulling his face down to hers. "Make love to me," she whispered. "Show me what gentle looks like from someone this strong." What followed was tender and overwhelming. Garrison moved with excruciating care, watching her face for any sign of pain or fear. But Sutton met him with trust and desire, and a fierce determination that undid him completely. It wasn't easy. His size made everything complicated. But Sutton didn't flee. She guided him, worked with him, whispered encouragement when he started to pull back. And for the first time in 29 years, Garrison Thorne felt whole. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her small body tucked against his massive frame. Sutton's fingers traced patterns on his chest. "I've never," Garrison started, his voice rough. "No one's ever stayed before. They all ran before we could even try." Sutton pressed a kiss over his heart. "Their loss, my gain." His arms tightened around her. "You've saved me in ways you'll never understand." She looked up at him. "We saved each other." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, finally at peace. Neither noticed the shadow that passed by the door. Neither saw Chancellor Darius Kovach pause in the corridor, his face twisting with malicious satisfaction. He'd been looking for Sutton to deliver a message from Ronan. Instead, he'd found something far more valuable. Through the crack in the door that hadn't quite latched, he'd seen everything. The king and his stepmother, together, in the most damning way possible. Darius moved silently down the hall, his mind already racing. This was better than he'd hoped. Not just an emotional attachment, not just inappropriate affection, but full consummation. Undeniable, unforgivable. He found Lady Margot in her chambers, still awake despite the late hour. "I have a gift for you," he said, closing the door behind him. "The Broken King just handed us everything we need." Margot's eyes gleamed. "Tell me, he's bedding his father's wife. I saw them, in his chambers, together." Margot's smile was venomous. "Perfect. We expose them at tomorrow's council meeting. The scandal alone will destroy him." And when Garrison falls, Darius continued, "My son Thaddeus takes the throne, as it should have been from the beginning." They began planning immediately, the witnesses they'd need, the evidence they'd fabricate to support what Darius had actually seen, the theatrical presentation that would turn the court against their king. In his chambers, Garrison woke once in the deep night. Sutton was asleep against him, her breathing soft and even. He watched her face in the moonlight and felt something he'd thought impossible. Hope. But in the shadows outside his door, conspiracy was taking shape. And by morning, the kingdom they'd both fought so hard to find peace in would be burning around them. If you're feeling the tension right now, if your heart is racing wondering what happens next, do me a favor. Hit that like button and subscribe to join the pack. I post new werewolf romance stories multiple times a week, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. Your support helps me keep bringing you these stories. Now let's see if Garrison and Sutton survive what's about to happen. The council chamber doors burst open at precisely 9 in the morning, slamming against stone walls with enough force to crack the ancient wood. Every noble family in the Bloodstone Pact territory had been summoned. Emergency assembly, mandatory attendance, no exceptions. Garrison stood at the head of the table, still wearing yesterday's clothes because he'd overslept for the first time in 2 years. Sutton's scent clung to his skin. Her taste still lingered on his lips. He'd woken wrapped around her, both of them tangled and peaceful, and for exactly 17 minutes he'd forgotten that the world outside his chambers existed. Then the summons came. Urgent, critical, the kind that couldn't be ignored. Now he stood facing a room full of hostile faces, and his instincts were screaming that something was catastrophically wrong. Chancellor Darius Kovach stood in the center of the chamber like a viper coiled to strike. Beside him, Lady Margot wore an expression of righteous fury that made Garrison's wolf surge forward in warning. His cousin Thaddeus leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, mouth curved in a smirk that promised violence. "Your Majesty," Darius began, his voice dripping false respect. "Grave allegations have surfaced, allegations that threaten the very foundation of this kingdom's moral authority." Garrison's jaw clenched. "What allegations?" Darius gestured to a servant who stepped forward carrying a leather folder. "We have witnesses, testimonies, evidence of conduct so depraved, so morally bankrupt, that it calls into question your fitness to rule." The servant opened the folder. Inside were statements, signatures, timestamps. Garrison scanned them quickly, servants claiming they'd seen him with Sutton, late-night encounters, inappropriate closeness. Whispered conversations, touches that lasted too long. Most of it was fabricated, but enough was true to be damaging. "You've been watching me," Garrison said quietly, "spying on your king." "Protecting this kingdom," Margot snapped. "Someone has to maintain standards when you clearly won't." "What exactly are you accusing me of?" Darius's smile was poisonous. "Of corrupting your father's wife, of carrying on an illicit affair with Queen Sutton while your father lies elderly and frail upstairs, of violating every moral principle this pack holds sacred." The room erupted. Gasps, muttered curses, shock performed with theatrical precision. Garrison realized with cold clarity that this had been orchestrated. The timing, the audience, the manufactured outrage. This was a coup dressed in moral indignation. "These accusations are lies," Garrison said. "Are they?" Darius pulled out another document. "Because I personally witnessed you and Sutton in your private chambers last night. Together, intimately. Shall I describe what I saw in more detail, or is your guilt already evident?" The blood drained from Garrison's face. Darius had seen them, actually seen them. This wasn't fabrication or exaggeration. This was truth weaponized. "You were spying through my chamber door?" "I was delivering a message from your father. The door was ajar. What I saw was undeniable." Margot stood, her voice ringing with manufactured horror. "This is an abomination. The king beds his stepmother while his father lives. What's next? Do we descend into complete moral decay?" The council members murmured agreement, some genuine, most calculated. Garrison could see the political maneuvering happening in real time. Darius and Margot had spent months building this coalition. They'd just been waiting for the right ammunition. Thaddeus pushed off the wall, all lazy arrogance. "Seems pretty clear we need new leadership. Someone who understands basic decency." "You want my crown," Garrison said. "Just say it. I want what's best for this pack. And what's best isn't a king who violates his own family." The chamber doors opened again. Sutton walked in, chin high, eyes blazing. She wore a simple dress but carried herself like she owned the room. "Don't," Garrison started. "These are lies," Sutton interrupted, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Lies constructed by people who profit from his fall. The Omega whore defends her lover," Darius said, his tone dripping contempt. "How touching." Sutton turned on him. "Watch your mouth when you speak to me. Or what? You'll corrupt more members of the royal family?" The insult hung in the air. Garrison felt his alpha rage building, felt windows starting to rattle, felt the air pressure in the room shift as his dominance flared. "Careful," he said quietly. The word vibrated with barely restrained violence. Darius didn't back down. "Truth isn't an insult, Your Majesty. You've been bedding your father's wife. That's not slander. That's fact." Sutton stepped forward. "You want facts? Here's one. You've been embezzling from the royal treasury for 3 years, skimming off infrastructure budgets, redirecting funds to offshore accounts." The room went silent. Darius's face paled. "I have documentation," Sutton continued. "Bank records, transfer receipts. All with your signature. I've been investigating you since the day Ronan hired me. You're bluffing, am I?" She pulled a flash drive from her pocket. "This contains everything. Every transaction, every forged approval, every bribe you've paid to keep council members quiet." Margot laughed, but it sounded forced. "Convenient. The accused produces evidence exactly when she needs it. I'm a forensic analyst, Sutton said. Or I was, before my family decided Omega daughters should only do acceptable work. I've spent 6 months building this case because I knew you'd come for Garrison eventually. She looked around the room. You want to talk about corruption? Let's talk about how Darius has been systematically stealing from every infrastructure project for years. Roads that were supposed to be repaired, schools that needed funding, medical supplies for border territories. All of it disappeared into his accounts. That's a lie, Darius snarled. Then let's review the evidence together, right here, right now. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Some looked genuinely shocked. Others looked trapped. Garrison realized Sutton had just flipped the entire dynamic. Darius had expected to control the narrative. Instead, he was suddenly defending himself. Even if what you say is true, Margot said, her voice sharp, it doesn't change what you and the king have done. No, it doesn't. The voice came from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. Former King Ronan stood in the doorway, supported by 2 nurses but standing nonetheless. At 85, he looked frail, fragile, but his eyes were sharp as knives. Father, Garrison started. Be quiet, Ronan said. He moved slowly into the room, each step deliberate. I have something to say, and you're all going to listen. He stopped in the center of the chamber, facing the council. My son and Sutton are in love. Have been for months. I've known the entire time. The room exploded again. Ronan raised a hand for silence. I encouraged it, he continued. Pushed them together. Told Sutton she had my blessing to pursue happiness, even if it meant loving my son. You've lost your mind, Margot said. No, I've accepted reality. Ronan's voice was steady. I'm dying, have been for over a year. The healers give me months, maybe weeks. I married Sutton to protect her from her family, to give her security after I'm gone, but somewhere along the way I realized she and Garrison were perfect for each other. That's obscene, Darius said. That's love. Ronan looked at Garrison. My son has spent years believing he's too broken to deserve happiness. Too different. Too much. He's watched 31 women reject him for circumstances beyond his control, and I'll be damned if I let him suffer alone for the rest of his life because of outdated propriety. He turned to Sutton. This woman has shown me more genuine kindness in 6 months than my own family has in years. She cares for me because she wants to, not because she has to, and she sees my son as human, not as a weapon or a crown or a political asset. So yes, Ronan said, facing the council. I gave them my blessing. I encouraged their relationship, and I'm going to make it official. He pulled papers from his jacket, annulment documents, already signed by me and witnessed. My marriage to Sutton is dissolved as of this moment. Father, you can't, Garrison said. Watch me. Ronan's smile was fierce. I'm still alive, still legally king until my death. I haven't abdicated. Which means I outrank every vote this council could make. He held up another document. This is a royal decree. Sutton and Garrison will marry within 48 hours. Anyone who opposes this will answer to me directly. The council chamber descended into chaos. Voices shouting, people standing, arguments breaking out. But Ronan stood firm, a dying man wielding his final authority like a sword. Darius's face twisted with rage. You're destroying this kingdom's foundation. I'm saving my son. There's a difference. Margot stepped forward. The people will never accept this. The scandal alone will tear us apart. Then they'll learn to accept it, Ronan said. Or they can find another pack to join. He looked at Garrison and Sutton. You have my blessing, my love, and my protection for as long as I draw breath. Use it wisely. The old king turned and walked out, nurses scrambling to support him. The room remained in shocked silence. Then Darius smiled. Slow, calculating, dangerous. Enjoy your victory while it lasts, he said quietly. The old man's given you 48 hours. Let's see if you survive them. The threat was clear. Garrison's wolf surged forward, ready to tear Darius apart. But Sutton's hand found his, squeezing tight. Not here, she whispered. Not like this. Garrison forced himself to breathe. to control the rage threatening to consume him. This was exactly what Darius wanted. Violence, loss of control, proof that the king was too dangerous to rule. He wouldn't give it to him. "This council is dismissed," Garrison said. His voice was quiet but absolute. "You have 48 hours to prepare for a royal wedding. I suggest you use the time wisely." He walked out, Sutton's hand in his, leaving the chamber in turmoil behind them. In the corridor, Sutton pulled him into an alcove. "You're shaking. I wanted to kill him. Right there, in front of everyone. I know." Her hands framed his face. "But you didn't. That's the difference between you and them." Garrison pulled her close, breathing her in. "What happens now? Now we plan a wedding. Fast. They won't let this go. Darius and Margot. They'll try something, I know." Sutton's eyes were hard. "So we stay alert. We trust no one outside our immediate circle, and we survive the next 48 hours. Garrison kissed her forehead. "I love you. I love you too. Now let's go tell your father thank you before he collapses from exertion." They found Ronan in his chambers, looking exhausted but satisfied. The nurses fussed over him, but he waved them away. "That was stupid," Garrison said. "You could have hurt yourself. Worth it." Ronan's smile was weak but genuine. "Did you see Darius's face?" "Father, seriously? I'm dying anyway, boy. Might as well go out making grand gestures." Sutton sat beside him, taking his hand. "Thank you for everything. Thank you for making my last months meaningful." Ronan squeezed her fingers. "Now go. Plan your wedding. Let an old man rest." Outside, Garrison and Sutton stood in the hallway, reality setting in. 48 hours, Sutton said. 48 hours, Garrison agreed. Neither of them knew that in a darkened room 3 floors below, Darius Kovac was meeting with hired assassins, that Thaddeus was positioning guards loyal to him throughout the palace, that Margot was already drafting the proclamation that would be read after Garrison's body was found. The conspiracy had entered its final phase. And the clock was ticking. The wedding preparations moved with frantic urgency. Sutton stood in the royal fitting room surrounded by seamstresses who worked with practiced efficiency. The dress was simple, white silk that flowed like water. She'd refused the traditional heavy gowns and elaborate trains. If she was going to marry Garrison, she'd do it as herself. No pretense, no performance. "Are you certain about the bare feet, my lady?" the head seamstress asked nervously. "It's rather unconventional." "I've never been conventional." Sutton studied her reflection. The dress fit perfectly, simple but elegant, exactly what she wanted. The seamstress hesitated. "There are deep pockets sewn into the sides, as you requested, though I confess I don't understand why." "Emergency wine vials," Sutton said cheerfully, "in case anyone tries to poison my husband at the reception." The seamstress's face went through several expressions before settling on uncertain concern. "You're joking, yes?" Sutton's smile was enigmatic. "Am I?" Across the palace, Garrison stood in his father's study, reviewing security protocols with the captain of his personal guard. Connor Hayes had served the Thorne family for 30 years. If anyone could be trusted, it was him. "Every entrance point covered," Connor said, pointing to the map spread across the desk. "Guards you've personally vetted. No one Thaddeus has influenced. No one on Darius's payroll." "What about the ceremony itself?" "Small, private, just immediate family and witnesses required by law." Connor's expression was grim. "Less surface area for attack. You think they'll try something?" "I think Darius would rather see you dead than married to Sutton." Connor met his eyes. "You've handed him a 48-hour window. He'd be a fool not to use it." Garrison's jaw clenched. "Then we make sure he fails." That night, unable to sleep, Garrison found himself back on the North Tower, the place where everything had started, where Sutton had first appeared with tea and honesty and changed his entire world. He heard her footsteps before she spoke. Couldn't sleep either. Garrison turned. Sutton stood in the tower entrance wearing the same pajamas and cardigan from that first night. Intentional, he realized. A callback to where they'd begun. Too much noise in my head, he admitted. She crossed to him, slipping under his arm like she belonged there. We're really doing this. Having second thoughts? No. Her answer was immediate. Terrified thoughts, but not second thoughts. Garrison pulled her closer. What scares you most? That something will go wrong. That Darius or Margot will find a way to stop this. That I'll wake up and it'll all have been a dream. He kissed the top of her head. It's real. You're real. This is happening. They stood in silence, looking out over the kingdom. Below, lights flickered in windows. Fires burned in hearths. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their king was about to marry his stepmother in the most scandalous union in pack history. Do you think they'll ever accept us? Sutton asked quietly. Some will. Some won't. Garrison's voice was steady. But I stopped caring what they think the night you didn't run. That's a lie. You care deeply. All right, yes, he smiled. I care, but I care about you more. Sutton turned in his arms, looking up at him. Tomorrow this time, I'll be your wife. Queen, he corrected. Tomorrow you'll be queen. That's still surreal. You'll be magnificent. I'll be barefoot and terrified. Best kind of queen. They kissed under the stars, slow and deep, savoring the moment. Tomorrow would bring chaos. Tonight was theirs. In the shadows below, a figure watched through night vision binoculars. Thaddeus lowered them, pulling out his phone. They're on the North Tower. Isolated. Perfect opportunity. The text went to Darius. The response came back immediately. Not yet. Wait for the ceremony. Maximum impact. Thaddeus pocketed the phone, smiling in the darkness. 36 hours left. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. A delegation from the Western Pack, from the coastal territories, from the mountain clans, all arriving unannounced, all demanding immediate audience with the king. Garrison received them in the throne room, Sutton at his side despite protocol that said she shouldn't be there yet. Alpha Kendrick of the Western Pack spoke first. We've heard disturbing rumors that you're marrying your father's widow. Former wife, Garrison corrected. The marriage was annulled yesterday, a technicality that doesn't address the moral issue. With respect, Alpha Kendrick, my morals aren't your concern. They are when they affect pack alliances. Kendrick's expression was hard. Many of our members find this union offensive, degenerate. Then they're welcome to their opinions, Sutton said. Her voice was calm but carried an edge. As I'm welcome to mine. And what opinion is that? That consenting adults choosing love over convention shouldn't require anyone's approval but their own. Kendrick turned to her. You have no standing to speak here. Actually, Garrison said quietly, she does, as my mate, as my queen-to-be. And if you speak to her with disrespect again, we'll have a different kind of problem. The threat hung in the air. Kendrick wasn't a small man, but compared to Garrison's 7 feet of alpha dominance, he looked diminished. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact. Garrison's voice dropped. You came into my territory, into my home. You'll show respect or you'll leave. Your choice. The other alphas shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going how they'd planned. They'd expected a defensive king, someone they could bully. Instead, they faced absolute authority backed by barely restrained violence. We have concerns, Alpha Roslyn of the coastal territories said, her tone more diplomatic, about stability, leadership, the message this sends. The message is simple, Garrison said. I'm marrying the woman I love. If that threatens your sense of stability, perhaps you should examine why other people's happiness makes you uncomfortable. This isn't about happiness, Kendrick snapped. It's about tradition, standards, the foundation of our society. Sutton laughed, not kindly. Interesting, because the foundation of your society also includes selling Omega daughters like livestock, treating women as property, forcing bonds for political gain. Should we preserve those traditions too? The room went silent. Kendrick's face flushed red. My sister was sold to your pack, Sutton continued. She was 17. Your beta purchased her from my father for territory access and cash. She tried to escape twice. Both times she was beaten and returned. She killed herself 6 months later. The words landed like bombs. Garrison's hand found Sutton's, squeezing tight. "So forgive me if I don't care about your moral concerns," Sutton said. "You want to talk about degeneracy? Look at your own house first." Kendrick stood. "This is an outrage." "No," Garrison said. "What's an outrage is that you came here to lecture me about morality while presiding over a pack that treats women like commodities. What's an outrage is that my father had to marry Sutton just to protect her from being sold by her own blood." He rose from his throne. "Here's how this works. I'm marrying Sutton tomorrow. You can attend or not, support us or not, but if you speak against her again, if you question her worth, if you treat her as anything less than the queen she's about to become, I will consider it a personal insult." "And personal insults," he continued, his alpha force flooding the room, "I take very seriously." The visiting alphas practically fled. Garrison watched them go, then turned to Sutton. "That was risky, worth it." Her smile was fierce. "Your face when I mentioned my sister? I didn't know. I'm sorry. Don't be. She died years ago, but Kendrick profited from her death. He doesn't get to judge us." They stood in the empty throne room, hands clasped, both knowing they just made powerful enemies. Both knowing tomorrow would be even more dangerous, but neither of them was backing down. That evening, Ronan called them to his chambers. He looked weaker than yesterday, grayer, more fragile, but his eyes were still sharp. "I have something for you." He gestured to a box on the table. "Open it." Inside was a crown. Delicate gold worked into patterns of leaves and stars. Ancient, beautiful. "Your mother's," Garrison breathed. "For Sutton." Ronan smiled. "Helena would have loved her. Would have loved you two together." Sutton's eyes filled with tears. "I can't accept this." "You can, and you will." Ronan's voice was firm. "You're going to be queen. You need a crown, and I can't think of anyone more worthy to wear Helena's." He took Sutton's hand. "My wife was fierce and kind, and she never apologized for who she was. You remind me of her, more than you know." "Thank you," Sutton whispered. Ronan turned to Garrison. "Tomorrow I'm walking you down that aisle. Don't argue, I'm doing it. Father, you can barely stand. I'll stand for this." Ronan's expression left no room for debate. "I'm giving my son away to the woman who saved his life. I'll stand if it kills me." Garrison knelt beside his father's chair. "Thank you for everything, for seeing us, for fighting for us. You're my son." Ronan's hand shook as he placed it on Garrison's head. "Fighting for you is the easiest thing I've ever done." They stayed like that for a long moment. Father and son, king and heir. Two men who'd both learned that love mattered more than tradition. Later, as they left Ronan's chambers, Sutton stopped Garrison in the corridor. "He's dying, I know. Soon." "I know." Garrison's voice cracked. "He's holding on for tomorrow. For us. Then we make tomorrow perfect. For him." They spent the night apart. Tradition demanded it. Garrison hated every second. He paced his chambers like a caged animal, his wolf howling for his mate, every instinct screaming that she was too far away. Connor found him at midnight, still pacing. "You need to sleep, Your Majesty." "Can't. Try. Tomorrow's a long day, and you'll need your strength." Garrison stopped. "You think something's going to happen?" Connor's expression was carefully neutral. "I think Darius has been too quiet. I think men like him don't accept defeat gracefully. And I think you should be prepared for anything." "What would you do? If you were planning something?" Connor considered. "The ceremony's too public. Too many witnesses. I'd wait for a moment of transition. When you're vulnerable, distracted. Like when? Like when you're exchanging vows and your attention is completely on your bride." Garrison's blood ran cold. "You think they'll attack during the ceremony? I think it's what I'd do." They spent the next hour reviewing security again, repositioning guards, changing protocols. By the time Connor left, Garrison's mind was racing with worst-case scenarios. He didn't sleep, just stood at his window watching the sky slowly lighten, counting down the hours until he'd either marry the woman he loved or watch everything burn. The wedding day dawned clear and cold. Perfect winter weather, deceptively peaceful. Sutton woke to find a note slipped under her door. Simple paper, elegant handwriting. Today you become queen, not because of a crown, but because of who you are. I'm proud to call you daughter. Love, Ronan. She pressed the note to her chest, tears streaming, and allowed herself one moment of pure emotion before forcing herself to focus. The ceremony was scheduled for sunset. 6 hours away, 6 hours to prepare, 6 hours for anything to go wrong. The seamstresses arrived to help her dress, the makeup artists, the hairstylists. Sutton submitted to their ministrations while her mind raced through everything that could go wrong. Assassins, poison, political coups, protests. "You're shaking, my lady," one of the seamstresses said. Wedding nerves. It was a lie. Sutton wasn't nervous about marrying Garrison. She was terrified someone would stop them before they could. Across the palace, Garrison stood in his father's chambers, wearing formal ceremonial armor polished to mirror brightness. Ronan sat in a chair, breathing heavily from the exertion of getting dressed. "You look like a king," Ronan said. "I look terrified." "That too." Ronan smiled. "Your mother was terrified on our wedding day, threw up twice before the ceremony." "Really, really?" But the moment she saw me waiting at that altar, everything else disappeared. It was just us. "I hope you're right. I am. Trust me." Connor appeared in the doorway. "It's time, Your Majesty." The walk to the great plaza felt like miles. Garrison's heart hammered against his ribs. His hands were steady, but only through supreme effort of will. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every face in the crowd a potential enemy. The plaza had been open to everyone. Nobles and commoners, Alpha and Omega. Anyone who wished to witness history. Thousands of people packed the space, held back by ceremonial guards. Garrison took his position at the altar. Connor stood beside him as witness. The priestess waited, ancient and serene, representing traditions older than the kingdom itself. Then the music started, and Garrison forgot to breathe. Sutton appeared at the plaza entrance, white silk flowing around her like water, Helena's crown catching the sunset light, bare feet on cold stone. No pretense, no performance, just her, perfect and impossible, and his. Ronan stood beside her, one hand on her arm for support, using her as much as supporting her. They walked slowly up the aisle together. The crowd hushed, watching this unprecedented moment, a dying king giving away his former wife to his son. Halfway up the aisle, Ronan stumbled. Sutton caught him, holding him steady. They paused, and for a moment, it looked like he might collapse. But Ronan straightened, determination overriding exhaustion, and continued forward. They reached the altar. Ronan transferred Sutton's hand to Garrison's, the gesture heavy with meaning. "She's yours now," Ronan said quietly. "Take care of her." "Always," Garrison promised. Ronan stepped back, and Garrison and Sutton faced each other. The priestess began the traditional vows. Garrison barely heard them. He was too focused on Sutton's face, on the tears streaming down her cheeks, on the absolute trust in her eyes. The ceremony called for traditional responses. Garrison had prepared different words. "I vow to never let my strength become your cage," he said. "I vow to hold you gently, love you fiercely, and spend every day earning your trust. I vow to see you as you are, not as the world wants you to be. And I vow that you'll never have to run again." Sutton's turn. Her voice shook but didn't break. "I vow to see you clearly always, not the weapon they feared, not the broken king they whispered about, but the man who made himself small so I could feel safe, and to remind you that you never have to shrink again. I vow to choose you every day, in every way, for as long as we both live." The priestess smiled. "By the authority vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Garrison pulled Sutton close and kissed her like she was oxygen, and he was drowning. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound deafening. For one perfect moment, everything was exactly right. Then the crossbow bolt flew. It came from the crowd, fired by someone dressed as a servant. The bolt was silver-tipped and aimed directly at Garrison's heart. A killing shot, perfectly calculated. Sutton saw the glint of metal, saw the trajectory, moved without thinking. She threw herself in front of Garrison just as the bolt released. It caught her in the left shoulder instead of his chest, the impact spinning her backward. Garrison caught her as she fell, his roar of anguish shaking the entire plaza. Guards swarmed immediately. Connor tackled the assassin. Chaos erupted as people screamed and scattered. No, 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 no. Garrison pressed his hand to Sutton's shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. Blood poured between his fingers, hot and sticky. Stay with me. Sutton, stay with me. Her face was pale, shocked, but her hand found his. I'm okay. I'm okay. You're not okay. You're bleeding. Better me than you. Her smile was weak. Couldn't let them kill you on our wedding day. Bad luck. The royal healer rushed forward, already pulling supplies from his bag. We need to move her. Now. The bolt's poisoned. The words hit Garrison like a physical blow. Poisoned. She'd taken a poison bolt meant for him. His alpha rage exploded. Windows shattered throughout the plaza. The ground trembled. Every wolf in the vicinity whimpered and dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the crushing force of his dominance. Garrison's wolf surged forward, demanding blood, demanding revenge, demanding the death of everyone responsible. Don't, Sutton gasped. Her hand squeezed his. Don't lose control. Prove you're better. The words cut through his rage. Barely. He forced himself to breathe, to pull the wolf back, to choose restraint over violence. Connor, he said, his voice deadly calm. The assassin. I want him alive. Already secured, Connor called back. And we've got 2 more. They were positioned in the crowd. Who hired them? They're not talking yet. They will. Garrison looked down at Sutton, memorizing her face in case these were her last moments. I love you. Love you, too. Her eyes were starting to glaze. Garrison, the poison. The healer was already working, cutting away fabric, examining the wound. It's nightshade, silver-laced. She needs surgery immediately. Then move, Garrison snarled. They transferred Sutton to a stretcher. Garrison walked beside her, holding her hand, refusing to let go. Around them, guards secured the plaza, arrested conspirators, controlled the panicking crowd. In the chaos, no one noticed Darius Kovacs slipping away into the shadows. No one saw Thaddeus abandoning his post. No one realized the conspiracy was fracturing as their primary attack failed. The surgery took 4 hours. Garrison paced outside the medical wing like a caged predator. Ronan sat in a chair, looking 10 years older, nurses hovering anxiously. Connor stood guard, coordinating interrogations through rapid messages on his phone. The assassins are talking, Connor reported. All 3 hired by the same person. Paid through intermediaries, but the trail leads back to Darius. Where is he? Gone. Disappeared right after the attack. Thaddeus too. Find them. Garrison's voice was winter itself. I want them found and brought before me. Alive. Yes, Your Majesty. The surgery room doors finally opened. The head healer emerged, exhausted, blood on his robes. She's stable. The poison's been purged. She'll need time to heal, but she's going to survive. Garrison's knees actually buckled. Connor caught him. Relief so intense it felt like drowning washed over him. Can I see her? She's sleeping, but yes. Garrison entered the recovery room like he was walking on holy ground. Sutton lay in the bed, pale and bandaged, but breathing, alive. He knelt beside the bed, taking her hand carefully. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Her eyes fluttered open. Stop apologizing. Her voice was weak but steady. I'd do it again. You almost died. But I didn't. She squeezed his fingers. We're married now, right? The ceremony finished before I got shot? Technically, yes. Then we won. Her smile was drowsy from medication. They tried to stop us and we won. Garrison kissed her hand. Rest. Heal. I'll be right here. Promise? Promise. She drifted back to sleep. Garrison stayed kneeling beside her, his hand in hers for the next 12 hours. Ronan visited, staying only briefly before exhaustion forced him back to bed. Connor brought updates. The conspiracy was unraveling. Darius had fled the territory. Thaddeus was captured trying to cross the border. Margot was found in her chambers, packing to flee. By dawn, the full scope became clear. The assassination plot involved 7 conspirators, 3 hired killers, 4 insiders providing access and information. All of it orchestrated by Darius with Margot's financial backing and Thaddeus's tactical support. They'd planned to kill Garrison at the wedding, frame it as a random attack, install Thaddeus as emergency regent, consolidate power before anyone could object. But Sutton's instinct had saved him. Her willingness to take a bolt meant for him had exposed the entire conspiracy. 3 days later, Sutton was strong enough to sit up. The poison had been purged, but recovery was slow. Garrison barely left her side. They brought Thaddeus before her. He stood in chains, defiant despite being caught. "Why?" Sutton asked. "Why try to kill your own cousin?" "Because he's weak." Thaddeus's voice was full of contempt. A king who lets his emotions rule him, who chooses love over strength, who thinks being gentle makes him powerful. "And you think being cruel makes you strong?" Garrison asked quietly. "I think strength is the only thing that matters. Then you've already lost." Sutton's voice was tired but firm. "Because strength without compassion is just cruelty. Power without restraint is just violence. Your cousin has both. That's why he'll always be a better king than you'd ever be." Thaddeus lunged forward, but guards held him back. "You're a fool," he spat. "Both of you. This kingdom will tear itself apart over your perversion." Garrison stood, moved close enough that Thaddeus had to crane his neck to look up at him. "My father gave me one lesson above all others," Garrison said. "Power is nothing without control. I could kill you right now, with my bare hands, in front of everyone, and no one would stop me." He leaned closer. "But I won't, because Sutton asked me not to. Because being king means choosing justice over revenge. Because proving I'm better than you matters more than satisfying my rage." He straightened. "You're stripped of rank, exiled from Bloodstone territory. If you ever return, I'll consider it an act of war." Thaddeus was dragged away, still cursing. Garrison turned back to Sutton. "How'd I do?" "Perfect." Her smile was proud. "That's my king. Darius was never found. Rumor said he'd fled to South America, that he was living under an assumed name in Buenos Aires." Garrison let him go. Spending resources to chase him felt like giving him power he didn't deserve. Margot was given a choice, exile or public trial. She chose exile. Left in the middle of the night with a single suitcase, the Thorne family never spoke her name again. 2 weeks after the assassination attempt, Sutton was finally strong enough to leave the medical wing. Garrison carried her to their chambers despite her protests that she could walk. "I'm not an invalid," she said. "Indulge me. I almost lost you. Let me be overprotective." She kissed his jaw. "Overprotective is one of your best qualities." That evening, Ronan called them to his chambers one final time. He looked worse, grayer, more fragile, like he was held together by will alone. "I'm proud of you," he said. "Both of you. You survived. You stayed together. You proved love matters more than convention." "Father," Garrison started. "Let me finish." Ronan smiled. "I'm dying. Probably tonight. Maybe tomorrow. The healers say my heart's giving out." Tears streamed down Sutton's face. "Ronan, don't cry. This is a good death. I got to see my son happy. Got to walk you both down that aisle. Got to tell Darius to go to hell one last time." Ronan laughed, the sound weak but genuine. "I'm content." He took both their hands. "Rule with wisdom, love with everything you have, and remember that being different isn't being broken. It's just being yourself." Those were his last words. He died that night in his sleep, peacefully, his nurses reporting that he'd smiled at the end. The kingdom mourned. Even the people who'd questioned his choices respected the old king enough to grieve properly. The funeral was massive. 3 days of traditional ceremonies. Ronan was laid to rest beside Helena, his first queen, in the royal crypts. Garrison gave the eulogy, spoke about a father who'd taught him that strength meant choosing kindness, that power meant protecting those weaker, that being king meant serving, not ruling. He was the best of us, Garrison finished, and if I can be half the man he was, I'll consider my reign successful. The coronation happened a week later. Not for Garrison, he'd already been crowned, but for Sutton, the ceremony transforming her from widow to queen in her own right. She wore Helena's crown, simple white dress, bare feet on the throne room floor, refusing to hide any part of herself. The priestess spoke the traditional words. Do you swear to uphold the laws of this kingdom, to protect its people, to serve with wisdom and compassion? I do. Do you accept the responsibilities of the crown, the burdens and privileges, the sacrifices required? I do. Then by the power vested in me, I crown you Sutton Thorne, Queen of Bloodstone. The crown settled on her head. The room erupted in applause. Not everyone was happy. Some faces in the crowd still showed disapproval, but enough people cheered that Sutton allowed herself to hope. That night they stood on the North Tower one final time before everything changed forever. We did it, Sutton said. We actually did it. Garrison pulled her close. Against all odds. They kissed under the stars, exactly where they'd first connected months ago. Two people the world had told were wrong, proving that love mattered more than convention. The months that followed brought challenges. Pack leaders who questioned Sutton's legitimacy. Families who refused to acknowledge the marriage. Political maneuvering that tested them constantly. But they faced it together. Garrison taught young alphas about restraint and control. Sutton implemented Omega protection laws that revolutionized pack dynamics. No more selling daughters. No more forced bonds. No more treating people as property. The changes came slowly, but they came. 6 months after the wedding, Sutton stood in the royal physician's office, staring at test results she'd read 3 times. You're certain, she asked. The physician smiled. Absolutely certain. About 8 weeks along. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Sutton pressed her hand to her still flat stomach. She was pregnant. They were having a baby. She found Garrison in the training yards, working with a group of young wolves on defensive techniques. He saw her face and immediately knew something was different. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Sutton took his hand and placed it on her stomach. We're pregnant. Garrison froze, processing. Then his face transformed into pure joy. He picked her up and spun her, laughing like she'd never heard him laugh before. We're having a baby, he said, setting her down carefully like she might break. We're really having a baby. Really, really. That evening, they sat in their chambers, Garrison's hand resting on Sutton's stomach, even though there was nothing to feel yet. What if I'm like my father? He asked quietly. What if I pass on the primordial alpha genes? What if our child faces the same rejection? Then we'll love them exactly as they are. Sutton covered his hand with hers. And we'll teach them that being different doesn't mean being broken. What if people judge them? Let them. She turned to face him. Our child will grow up knowing they're loved, knowing their parents chose each other despite the world's judgment. That's more than most people ever get. Garrison kissed her. Soft and deep and full of promise. You're going to be an amazing mother. You're going to be an amazing father. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Sutton's Omega protection laws continued to gain support. Garrison's reputation shifted from broken king to reformer. Slowly, gradually, the kingdom began to accept them. 18 months after the wedding, Sutton gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, both healthy, both perfect. The boy had Garrison's amber eyes and size. Even as an infant, he was larger than normal. The girl had Sutton's auburn hair and fierce expression. They named them Ronan and Helena, after the people who'd loved them enough to fight for their happiness. 2 years later, a third child came, another girl, small and fierce and absolutely fearless. The royal family grew. The kingdom stabilized, the reforms took hold. And on quiet evenings, Garrison and Sutton would stand on the North Tower where everything started, watching their children play in the gardens below, and marvel at how far they'd come. They'd been told they were too broken, too different, too wrong. They'd proven that love mattered more than judgment, that choosing each other was worth every fight, that being different wasn't the same as being worthless. "You know what I think about sometimes?" Sutton said one evening, leaning against Garrison's chest. "What?" "That night you almost sent me away, when you were so convinced I'd run." "What about it?" "I'm glad you were wrong." She turned in his arms. "I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad we fought for this. Me too." Garrison kissed her forehead. "Every day, me too. Their children grew strong and loved. The kingdom prospered." The laws they'd implemented protected people who'd never had protection before. Years later, when historians wrote about the Bloodstone Pact, they'd talk about the scandalous king who married his stepmother, about the Omega Queen who revolutionized pack law, about the love story that changed everything. But Garrison and Sutton didn't care about history books or legacy or what people centuries later would say. They cared about the family they'd built, the love they'd chosen, the life they'd fought for. Because in the end, that was all that mattered. Not crowns or kingdoms or traditions. Just two people who'd seen each other completely and decided to stay. Again and again and again. The broken king and the gold digger. The weapon and the Omega. The scandal and the revolution. They'd called it impossible. Called it wrong. Called it doomed. They'd called it love and proved that was enough. And that's where we'll leave Garrison and Sutton's story. Two people the world told were impossible, proving that love can survive anything. If this story touched your heart, if you felt every moment of their journey, please hit that subscribe button and join the Luna Werewolf Romance Stories pack. Share this with someone who loves forbidden love stories, epic romance, or just needs to believe that being different doesn't mean being broken. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment from this story. Was it the tower scene? The assassination attempt? The moment Sutton didn't run? I read every single comment, and I love hearing what resonates with you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you're never too broken to deserve love. Until next time, lovely.